It is my pleasure to introduce our final inspirational speaker, Jessica Buchleitner. Jessica has spent her career deep in the mire of gender-based violence, reaching out and listening deeply to the lived experience of victims of discrimination and violence all over the world. But although it would have been easy to get disheartened from that work, Jessica was not stuck. She was resourceful. Where I'm from in Oklahoma, there's a saying that says there's more than one way to skin a cat. Knowing that it would be difficult to get certain nation states to ratify the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, as a top-down solution, she helped take the issue of the convention to the grassroots level, recruiting cities and private industry to commit to the principles of CEDAW and serve as role models of action from the ground up. She too sees a light, and when one door is closed, she is flexible enough to find a window to reach it. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Emily. Much appreciated. So as many of you are tuning in from across the globe after the last days of obviously deep dives into current human rights issues, I want to take you back in time briefly to a very specific event in US history. Now, this event is the culmination of one woman's activism, endurance, and resolve. I'll give the slide a moment to populate because I want you to be able to see the image. Yes, thank you, Mary. On June 2nd, 1863, more than 750 men and women dashed to their freedom along the banks of the Combahee River in Beaufort, South Carolina, after being confined to plantations and forced to labor day in and day out in the fields. The United States was reeling from a tapering civil war where decades and debates about the human rights abuses of slavery polarized the young nation. Along the banks of the river stood this one woman leader, an ex-slave herself, the first to lead an armed assault during the Civil War and arguably the first in US history. She beckoned those coming towards her with a popular folk song. Now that woman, Araminta Ross, who became known as Harriet Tubman, the American Moses. Harriet faced every disadvantage of her time period. An African-American woman born into slavery and suffering from seizures as a result of abuse. She was also denied any formal education and remained illiterate for much of her adult life. Still, she conducted an estimated 13 missions to rescue over 70 enslaved people, using an extensive network of anti-slavery activists and safe houses known as the Underground Railroad, spanning the coast of an entire continent. As you see on this map, the network extended from hundreds of kilometers from north to south in a time period where we communicated using handwritten letters, and the North Star was often our only source of navigation. From a local coalition of anti-slavery activists to a secretive national network, campaigning themselves behind closed doors for our most basic human birthright, freedom. During the American Civil War, Harriet served as an armed scout and spy for the Union Army, and in her later years was also an original activist in the movement for women's suffrage. Now, growing up in South Carolina and throughout my years of activism, I bring Harriet into this presentation because she was always a source of guidance and inspiration for me. Seeing everything she accomplished as one single person, one sole woman, faced with every possible disadvantage, always motivated me to keep going in everything I've ever done. What you see here, in fact, are actually real pages from a global edition of a National Geographic magazine that I purchased in Italy in 2014. And when I saw that magazine sitting on the shelf at an airport, I realized what a prominent global figure Harriet was for human rights defenders everywhere. Her activism echoes throughout history as a ripple effect of its own, a one-woman continuum. Now, I use the word continuum, and of course not to take us up to outer space after I've just taken us back into the past, but because the word continuum implies a continuous action or set of actions. It implies eternity and never-ending efforts. It implies, as I stated earlier, a ripple effect evolving through generations. Now, that ripple effect often begins with one person, one idea for change, as you've seen in my historical example. Harriet will forever augment what it means to be a conductor for humanity who builds networks of communities and like-minded activists, far and wide in terms of geography and their intent, of course. Now, we are in a different era now, of course. We have Google Maps to navigate us, which is a great tool. But in many ways, Falco's efforts and that of its volunteers are in a similar spirit. Many of us attending today are on what I like to call, and what I've now nicknamed, the Falco Railroad, where we have community trains, where individuals can connect to local human rights projects, join SDG-focused global teams, work at the United Nations level. At Falco, thousands of connected activists across continents are working together for better communities, countries, and an overall planet. We stay strong in the face of despair. When obstacles appear insurmountable, we have kept going. But understandably, when faced with issues of human trafficking, child marriage, gender-based violence, it's very easy to feel a sense of powerlessness. This poem by Mark Strand appeared in Poetry magazine, and at first glance, it appears grim. He writes, "I have a key, so I open the door and walk in. It is dark, and I walk in. It is darker, and I walk in." Now, I use this poem because we hold a key to global issues that most of us want to touch. And in order to touch them, we ourselves have to walk into darkness time and time again. And we do this because at the center of that darkness is change. At the center is the continuum we create. But how do we know we're making a difference? I know we're all coming from various backgrounds and locations in this event, but raise your hand if you have ever questioned the effectiveness of your activism. Of course, I can't see your hands, but I'm assuming that several of you are raising your hands. If we were in a room, I would probably be able to see that. And I think we question the effectiveness of our activism because our hours, often voluntary, can be very long, and the causes we fight for, daunting and emotionally draining at times. But when you couple that with a feeling of less impact, you find yourself at times at crossroads where you question whether or not you should keep going, whether or not your work really does matter. So how can we make an impact? And rather, how are we making an impact? Through Falco, our continuum impact on SDGs 3, 5, 13, and 4 are through raising awareness via local and global activities, much like the one we're in today. Others include our environmental festival, articles that our global teams write monthly to support the SDGs, our Falco Foundation that awards education grants to its members and their families, the SDG development grants, and finally, our long-term global target projects that are also aligned with the SDGs. These activities put the SDGs front and center in important discussions to keep a consistent pulse on the issues they signify. By doing this, and by doing what we do, we build the Falco Railroad for our clubs, or trains, as I've now called them. So I want to share with you, as mentioned earlier, a community train moment that this signifies for me. It's an example of a ripple effect beginning with sole individuals and spreading to a national effort that continues to create lasting change around SDG 5, gender equality. In 2013, an NGO I represented at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, Women's Intercultural Network, decided to take on a grassroots leadership role in a campaign to bring the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW as we all know it, to the local level after the United States federal government failed to ratify it time and time again. Now, in response to this, coming from San Francisco at the time, which was the only city in the country to have adopted a local ordinance, what did we do? We mobilized a coalition. We can go on to the next slide, please. There we are. We mobilized a coalition of national NGOs and local leaders to get CEDAW adopted in municipalities around the entire country. And when I say around the entire country, I mean red states and blue states, for those who are American tuning into this broadcast. Cities for CEDAW was a unifying force. What we wanted to do was bring global to the local by creating a local, national, and international network of supporters, much in the spirit of Harriet. We started with just a few women and built it out into a massive effort that is now ongoing after several years. Adopting CEDAW as a local ordinance, as many of you know, has been proven to effectively address barriers that reduce the quality of life and provide equity of opportunity for women and girls. It's important that these efforts are ongoing. And of course, we all know we all won't live forever. As much as we think we can, we won't. So we want to create efforts that will outlast us, that other generations of younger men and women will carry forth for us after our passing. But how do we even know that we're doing that? So when we're examining our impact, it's important to remember two different kinds. We have measurable and non-measurable. One can be quantified very easily, and I've provided some examples on this slide, while the other doesn't always have a way to fully gauge its effectiveness, though we know it is effective. Starting with the SDGs, these give us clear categories of major global areas in consistent need of focus and attention. So aligning with them is the important first step. What's additionally important is developing methods at the local level with our clubs to measure what we're doing to advance them. And I've provided you with 7 steps to impact measurement. This is sort of a pocket guide, if you will, to getting your local club on board with measuring impact more often. I really encourage all of you to develop impact measurement methods. They help you track the effectiveness of your initiatives so you can pivot when you identify areas when you're not making the change that you want to make. Which reminds me, because as I've stated earlier, this is a sentiment we've all often felt. I'd like to offer you this very simple framework that you can apply to your activism, even when the problems you are facing are not simple. It's a series of questions, a couple of easy questions, but what it really is a thought process to help you unravel any frustrations or roadblocks to your goals, and possibly even identify uncharted territory. So I advise you to use these questions to map out solutions so you can see the sheer size of your network, where you have help, where you have allies, where you have supporters in places you may never have conceived of before. Harriet, for example, when she was first starting out, probably given her disposition, never thought she would have had the network of supporters that she had, but she kept trying. Slowly but surely, that network grew into something so much bigger than her. Yours can too. And that's exactly what all of you are doing by attending these several days of sessions about these critical human rights issues. You're growing your networks to help solve them in your own unique ways. But let's, for this instance, look in the mirror at yourself as an individual. Where will you start today with the new information that you carry? You show up to create change in many forms. The first always begins with you as one person. And then it advances on to you as a train passenger on the Falco train with other passengers making a difference collectively. From there, you become a conductor, a leader in your own efforts and cause. Above all, you're a member of a thrivable community dedicated to advancement and improvement of this world. Of course, you as a continuum, echoing then through generations. Everything, all change starts at the individual level with you. So to close out our Human Rights in Focus event, I want all of you to take out your tablet, smartphone, use your computer screen, a paper and pen if you have one lying around, and complete this very, very simple sentence. Today, blank starts with me. Now, you don't have any excuse to not do this because I've actually given you like a cheat sheet of of different things that are important to us that you can populate. But I want all of you to walk out of these sessions with a simple statement in mind. And why I want you all to walk out with this statement in mind is this is your commitment going forward to be really unwavering, courageous, and to give wholeheartedly to this cause. So to start us off, I will say that today, gender equality starts with me. And that is the continuum that I intend to create to outlast me. Thank you all for being here today. It's been my pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. That really was a great tool for us to focus our thinking on ways that we can move forward and be of assistance. And, you know, we are the change that we want to see in the world. And so we have to do it, just like you've suggested. It doesn't look like we have any questions on that because you've been so inspirational.
Feel free to ask if you want, and I'm happy to circulate a couple of the slides as reference material afterwards. So definitely happy to do that.
Really wonderful. We just wanted to ask very quickly if you'd like to talk for a little bit about your time at the UN.
Absolutely, sure. So I started out at the UN as an NGO delegate with Women's Intercultural Network, and Women's Intercultural Network was one of the premier networks in the US. Despite being such a small organization, its reach is massive. And they were at the original Beijing meeting where the Beijing Declaration was birthed. And the organization is structured a lot like the Beijing Declaration, where we have local, national, and global networks. So for many years, I represented Women's Intercultural Network in different areas, namely CEDAW, until we got into the Cities for CEDAW campaign, and that became our primary focus after that, and still is the primary focus of the NGO to this day, because the campaign started to grow quite quickly. So yeah, and then I moved over into getting consultative status for a smaller NGO called onemama.org, which actually cares for women in villages in rural Uganda to help them have babies safely. So they have a maternity clinic where they provide safe, like, birth supplies, healthcare needs. They actually started doing malaria prevention, community development work. And I was actually the instrument to get this NGO consultative status with ECOSOC. So that was one of the biggest highlights is to be able to bring, there's such a small NGO, but to be able to bring the insights they had into the UN network was really, really powerful.
That's really exciting. And we now know that you're a new member of the Munich International Women's Club. So
Correct.
we're excited to hear that and are curious what you're going to do now living in Munich.
I've been continuing the work with CEDAW, actually. Germany's done a lot of work around CEDAW, and I have to say it's quite a bit more progressive than the US at the federal level. We're a bit stalled there at the federal level at the moment, but with Cities for CEDAW, I would say that it's complete proof that if the federal governments will not act, citizens can move forward, civil society can move things forward in a way that is incredibly powerful. And I've been able to witness that, and hence the Harriet reference. It's funny, as a person growing up in South Carolina, when I was putting together this presentation, I really thought about what she did in her life. And it's really like building this massive sets of networks. And I thought to myself, how in the world, I mean, when we were doing Cities for CEDAW, we had Facebook. like this is back in time when it's handwritten letters, and you have to be quiet about everything you're doing. And it was incredible, because I wonder how she was able to do something so powerful as one single person. And that really resonated with me whenever I joined Falco. That's what completely resonated with me about Falco is this is civil society at its best, right? Local networks, making national and international policy work. And yeah, so
Do,
I'm happy
do you
to be
see
part
any?
of the Women's Club in Munich now.
Well, we're happy that you're a part of it as well. I'm curious if you see any individuals right now that you think are emulating Harriet Tubman, for example, Greta Thunberg, or
Absolutely. I was just going to say her. Yeah.
okay. Is there anybody else that you look to as someone who, as an individual, is bringing people along?
It's there's several people. There's actually a woman who's working a lot on tech policy issues named Mary Ann Franks, and I had interviewed her several years back as a source in one of my journalism pieces about sexual harassment in virtual reality environments. And I've kept her on Google Alert because I've been following the work that she's doing around what they call revenge porn. And there's been a lot of talk in this event about human trafficking, and revenge porn is a big problem. I'm working on a piece right now about the dark net, how people use the dark net for nefarious uses, but also for like civil society organization against oppressive governments. But one of the things I'm finding is that this pornography that's captured unwillingly is sold on the darknet or placed on the darknet. And a lot of her work in a coalition of other women activists in this field who are also lawyers, creating laws to help other women who've been victimized by this. I'm really seeing it. It's one person who's now created these policies and is affecting real laws in different states in the US right now. And it's powerful. Not exactly directly correlated to Harriet, but maybe an internet example. The internet has been used as a weapon against women for far too long. And I think we've all seen that each emerging technology that comes about, because of the diversity of who's developing the technology, it's often not tested with our last girl theory in mind. And that last girl theory, meaning we have to ask ourselves, how would this technology affect the last girl? The most underprivileged girl or woman on this planet, and how could it be used against her? And that's important. And this is something that this coalition of women that she's kind of leading. It's a cyber civil rights initiative. I believe the CCRI is the name of the NGO. And it is a group of women lawyers that are changing the internet for women. So powerful network.
I'm really excited to hear that. And I understand as well that you're going to be joining us in Vienna at our regional conference next week.
Absolutely. So. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Well, that's really wonderful. And I thank you so much for coming to speak to us, and also for laying out such a clear groundwork for ways that people can get active and help start a ripple that results in something great later on. So thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you. I want everybody in this event to realize that they are creating continuums with the work they're doing that younger activists will one day emulate and pick up. And I know at times it seems like you're not making a difference, but all of you are, really. And thank you all from the bottom of my heart for the difference you're all making. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much too. And now at this time, not only do I want to thank Jessica and all of our speakers, I would like to call to the stage our team volunteers. We called them the Human Rights in Focus core team. We have Mylene Kunst, who is our event co-chair, and Karen Castellan, the other co-chair, Teresa Hopewell, Mary Adams, Mary Manning, who did all of the tech work backstage, and we really had a star team who put together this agenda, who brought together all these wonderful speakers and made this event such a great success. So I'd just like to say thank you to you all. Thank you to everyone who has come over the whole weekend. It really was great to see everybody hop in and hop out and join in and hear about the issues that were of most importance to them. So Mylene, I don't know if you want to say anything, or Karen. We thank you all, and please do look at the expo booth. Consider buying What is a Perfect World or Hope is a Thing with Feathers, and continue to make a difference in your own communities, and be as active as you possibly can, because you do make a difference. So thank you very much, and we'll say goodbye.